What's going on, Roosevelt? What's going on, Donna B? Give people a couple minutes to get in here. Hit the like button on the way in. What's going on, Melody? Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, because people need to understand and recognize how this works. Because yesterday I received a question yesterday about having Lawrence Guy on the panel, and I wanted to go over that. Why actual conservatives and me get along. It's not hard, and more along of the point of the rest of his email of not really understanding how come guys do what they do. You know, what's going on, Jay Hall? Donald B. Listen, man, how can there be so much talk about a specific issue that everybody is good at, but nobody has conclusively solved? I mean, no, you're always going to get that. You're always going to get that every time, though. You're always going to get that. But you have to understand that once you start comforting stagnant people, you can't. Those people don't need credibility to do that. The only thing they have to do is go to an established system that doesn't work to keep continuing to keep doing that. There's nothing involved with it. I mean, if you don't know the life cycle of it at this point, then then you're never going to get it. And this is why this conversation needs to be in the hands of the younger individuals and not the hands of the people who are in the older individuals. Because the older individuals are responsible for making sure that the younger people don't practice the older people's mistakes. That's normally how cultures work. But in this culture right here, the old mistakes have to be practiced so that way the environment can stay stagnant where it is. And this is why you have so many people who you have so many Tommy Sotomayor clones. Why? No originality. Zero originality. Thanks for the 49 super chat, Melody. Yeah, hit the like on the way in. I'm not sure why my notifications ain't going out. I'm not gonna fight it. I don't care. You know. So it's like this. These things are not difficult, by the way. These things are not difficult to solve because see, you got to want to solve the problem all the way to the end. And what this individual who emailed me don't recognize is they're giving you compromise as a solution. Compromise is not a solution. You can't walk into a situation, give the person everything that they want and they ask for, and then claim victory. Like that's not how that works. If you want to see a new system, you got to be the first person, portion, and part of it. But see, you taught this level of compromise where you can maintain every single facet of the old system in the new system, and all of a sudden you're just going to monkey branch over. That isn't how it works. It's very rare for a person to level up all the way through that system and then just move on to another system. They can't do it because most of their life has been spent garnering the respect and the attention of and providing entertainment for those type of people. You're not just going to move on to something else. That's not really how it works. You're going to be stuck there for a very long time. And the process is easy to see. The only thing you have to do is what a success rate looks like within this particular framework. And at the perceived level of success, does the person actually run the environment at the end of it? That's what it might be. The answer is no. There is no part of this structure where you actually run things at the end of it. You're only compromised at the end of the actual structure. It's a social Ponzi scheme where the people at the top have to maintain the top and everybody's trying to crawl up the mountain. There's no end to it. What's going on, Suspect? So what you got to recognize is it's just simple. They didn't want that type of power. They didn't want that type of power to solve problems. They wanted the type of power to feed themselves into problems by putting on this specific type of cultural framework that let people know that, hey man, I'm just like you. I'm stuck just like you. We all in this together. Dude, it's very easy to do that, man. And for a lot of people, they have the three levels of compromise about them: the economic compromise, the sexual compromise, or the emotional compromise, to where they're stuck in the actual spin cycle of the culture itself. They can never separate themselves from it. And you keep thinking that you're gonna solve all types of complex problems in life, but you're somehow gonna maintain a specific level of nonsense personally within your life. Like both of those things don't work. How many people do you see who gets large sums of money and still hang around the same people? They haven't changed their mind state or anything. And then all of a sudden they're done in by the same people that they thought that they was better than, but economically better off with, and then they still went back to those people anyway. It's simple. This is why people come around and they try to act like they're interested in a certain process, but they're only interested in the results. They practice the mind state for like a couple of months and then they go back to what they were doing before. And you have to realize a life of compromise is a life of hell. They know that. They're living it. You think it doesn't suck as a human being to keep talking about this woman every single day? You think that's something that people are happy about? But they have to do that to survive. They have to do that to live. And it's not something that you can continuously do or even look at because it's going to affect your life too at some point. Think about it. With the actual people who are perceived to be pro black, knowing damn well that they're not, how much better off did people get by learning about the actual unconstitutional abuses of the past, but didn't take tangible steps in the future, even though the conditions were better? That's just a short example of it. These people have all this knowledge about things that do not matter, right? Especially right now. History is important, but history isn't going to stop you from taking tangible steps in this time period. Those people had to produce at a high level when there was under the threat of terrorism and death. So actually, excellence was normal under those circumstances. It was completely normal. But now, when you have the time now to where you can do all types of things that couldn't even dream of engaging in, but you're creating most of your creative processes trying to do other things for other people's comfort. That kind of messes things up for you. And then, like in every other social case within Black America or even white America, the productive guy becomes the enemy. The productive guy has always been the enemy. The guy who can separate and actually perform at a high level and not be compromised by the very avoidable things within the environment, dude, they were always the enemy. What's going on with this problem now? They were always the enemy. Every time. The dudes who were hanging out at the liquor store and all that, those were the guys who really hated or made excuses for the fact of everybody else who didn't succeed within the environment. It's always these external things, even though they're not really tangibly doing anything in their own right. The last time I went back home, it was the same people sitting outside the liquor store. I couldn't believe it. These dudes are 80 years old now, still out there, having the same level of discussions that you hear in the manosphere. So trust me, they didn't want that type of power either. They needed circumstances not to improve, so that way they could feel comfortable. That's what happened. And then their sons, nieces, and nephews, they just left them down there. Never went to go visit. Always complain about how come people don't come around, even though they're doing the same thing that they was doing 20 some years ago when I left. Same people. Yeah, it's very true. But it's very simple because these people didn't want that power to leave that stuff alone, man. They wanted the power to control the culture, to maintain it, have it in a hermetically sealed box. That's what they wanted. They didn't want to change anything. They still wanted the they still wanted to be the choice of the improper and wrong type of women. Because everybody got so much game, but ain't nobody got enough that game to get the hell off the marketplace. But that's the thing. There's no end to it. So I'm messing with you. So what you got to recognize, it's just simple, man. They don't want that kind of power. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after it in your own right. No one talks about personal power. No one talks about self discipline. No one talks about self control. No one talks about trajectory. No one talks about it. The reason why no one talks about it, because if you're stagnant, all of those things are counter to what's actually happening. That this is why there's a mad race to turn out every young man onto uncultured women so that way they won't grow up to be anything. On purpose. With the specific purpose of making sure that they control the trajectory of the culture. That's the thing. Because, see, normally in cultures, there's a plan, there's a 50-year plan, there's a 100-year plan for people in society. Like if you go to actual cultures and societies that work, those things are planned out. That's what their educational system is kind of centered around. What's going on, Ben, lady? So you have to realize that they want the power to talk about the same issues, which isn't power at all. It's nothing but stagnation. And it's going to affect every single facet of your life if you don't leave this stuff alone. Because the more personal power and the ability to leave the stuff alone that you have, none of this stuff matters. You're going to figure it out better very early. The higher you go up, the less of these people you're going to see. And the lower you go back, the more of these people that you're going to see. The point is to see less of these people and to have better and more results for yourself. The point wasn't to do all these things and then set yourself up for the frivolous giveaway. That's pretty dumb, but that's what you're being set up for on purpose by people who have already given up in life. They gave up. And it's the easiest thing in the world to do is to conserve a system that doesn't work currently. It's a very easy thing to do the status quo expectation. Not really much is actually expected of men inside this framework, except for to provide those women kids that they're going to damage and destroy, especially the wrong types of women. And then the full expectation is for the other men to be sexually stratified to the point to where they'll surrender for anything. And this is why there's so many people on the marketplace right now looking for something very specific, even though they never were taught to actually respect it in any type of framework. Everybody here is not lying, man. Everyone here now, where you have to look at the results, you have to look at it. And if you don't like looking at it, you won't have to look at it for such a long time. You can take that one hard look, you can change these specific things, and go to an actual result. You were always the X factor here. I know that it's easy for the comfort at the bottom thing, but you're never going to be able to undo that stuff past a certain point. It's who you are as a person deep down. If you want it all to change, then you have to change it all, sir. Yeah, he was shocked and surprised when I had an actual conservative on the panel how much we agreed on damn near everything. Why? Because we want the same type of results of where we're both going. He was shocked and surprised. Like, yeah, I'm probably, yeah. That's what happens when you're talking to actual conservatives who are actually involved in the process, who actually have a side taken, who actually is still with the side that they've taken. They're still going to read the processes and procedures and the plans and choose one person over the other. That's how it is when you're working with men with tangibles. Men with tangibles, we don't really need to argue all that much. What we try to do is we be out there trying to chop the weeds down so that way they don't get too high to where they overrun the garden. That's where we at now. It's simple. They didn't want that type of power, man. The power of actually knowing is something that's going to bring you a lot of stability and comfort to your life. You're just not going to be able to bring stability and comfort to people that you should leave alone. You're not going to be able to run around carrying this 747 jet of this culture on your back. It doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. Even for the people at the perceived top, they're no further ahead than the people who are just starting. Strong black girls. You have to deliberately sell yourself down a path that you know doesn't fit you. This stuff is so damn voluntary. It's not hard to go and find the top 10 jobs in your state that hasn't been filled. Not hard. You go this year, that year, last year before that, and the year before that. And then it's the actual workforce department within your county job to connect you to that type of training, which is most likely free or severely reduced. So that way you can become productive right away in a field that needs you right away. It was always the skills and abilities that was going to put you ahead of the actual environment. But a lot of people get minimally productive, then they get seized upon by the compromise of the past and they get pulled right back in. You go get a car, they feel the best that they ever felt in their life. They finally got access to a person that doesn't give a damn about them. And next thing you know, he's hitting the reset button. All this money that he just in value that he just added to himself, he just added a whole lot of overhead to his life because he emotionally wanted to feel good. Yeah, that's right, Ricky Lou. But at the end of the day, they're going around getting a Patrice O'Neal on. At least I got a piece. She may be 300 pounds, but at least I got a piece. Yeah, ridiculous. And these are the people who want to be the stewards of the culture, not business owners, not educated people who's not trying to tie themselves into the culture. Because it's one thing to be educated, it's one thing to be a business person. But if your business is based on still giving voice to people who actually don't need it, then you're not a help to anything. And then they have the nerve to call themselves pro black. But see, you have to listen to like white supremacists for a while because you'll see the same type of things that are going on for people who are quote unquote white supremacists, the people that you see that are quote unquote black supremacists. It's the same thing. They're superior with no outcomes. They're superior without having built anything. They're superior based on who they are. They're superior based on other people's accomplishments. That's what makes them superior. Are these people highly educated? No, because complex thought processes will be undone by this type of thinking. It's simple and very easy to see that, and it doesn't matter who you are. It's going to limit you at some point socially. And it's very simple to see that these people didn't want this type of power, man. They didn't want it because the type of power that will require them to fix these issues is counter to their end goal. Their end goal is to get this woman's respect. And the only way you can do that is by placing yourself under her control. The only thing you can do that is by attacking the specific people who are counter to her mission. All you got to do is not focus on productivity and your own power. They win. This is why nobody focuses on the outcomes because they just want to get you into the biz and then just let things go the way they go and never focus on the outcomes. The outcomes are never a part of the conversation. So you're supposed to flounder in a very stagnant point forever until your card get pulled. That's not how these things work, man. You're gonna have to leave this stuff alone. There's two ways you actually do leave this stuff alone. Actually, one, Your life gets to be so damn expensive and you have to work so hard to maintain minimal things. So that's where you learned your lesson, which is where most people are right now, who are trying to fake it till they make it and act like they're winning. Till the second portion is that you leave this stuff alone early and that you never have any experience with it. You could be aware of it because the awareness is a very good thing. You need to know what is practicing in the marketplace so that way you can protect yourself from it. You need to know what the latest schemes and all that kind of stuff is so that way you don't get, damaged or destroyed by it. But do you need to immerse yourself in it and actually practice it to see whether it's true? No, you don't need to do that. You ain't got time for that. A lot of these people can't stay on the straight and narrow. Principle is not going to help them. Principle is the enemy. Staying on the straight and narrow is the enemy. Having tangibles and outcomes, you're the enemy. Not a friend, you're an enemy. You're not going to be able to hold down all these associations no matter where you go. Imagine a football jersey with all 32 teams on it. That's what a person looks like. Or a basketball jersey with all those teams from the East and the West on one jersey. All these symbols on one jersey. That's what it is and that's what it looks like. Zero definition. They want to be fluid, they want to be liquid, so that way they can be able to just morph into another person depending on what environment that they're in. So much so to the point to where they don't even spend time doing what they actually need to actually be doing because they're trying to keep up these appearances. Is this stuff going to help you? The answer is no. Yeah, that's what it is, man. The Negro NASCAR jacket, man. Community, Team Reptile, Game, all that stuff on one jacket, man. Because very soon you're not going to be able to survive unless you're on UBI or you got skills and ability to rise above that. That's going to be it. But you can make those key decisions right now, though. And it's always going to be the same process, no matter what age you are. Shout out to the dudes in their 50s who are just now turning it around. Yeah, they simply admitted that they made a mistake and that their life that they was crawling up was the wrong deal. And then they eventually got results by doing things the proper way. One guy emailed me and like, man, I've been a fan of yours for like, you know, a whole bunch of years, especially when I first came to the space. And he turned it around. 3 years disappeared, came back on the scene. Like, man, dealt with different people, got different outcomes, different things that he thinks about and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it was always the same process. The process isn't changing, man. It's just become more and more important. And trying to have hold of an artificial bottom or minimum wage job, that's not helping you. Especially when you're walking into these high overhead situations for these counterparts within the environment, you're not going to be able to deal with them either. You're going to be too broke to deal with them. got to get out of this holding pattern, man. This is a prison of your own making. There's no heavy equipment involved. You put yourself in this situation, man. And if you put yourself in this situation, you can get yourself out of this situation. Yeah, that's what it is, man. Thanks for this 6.99 super chat. I mean, Roosevelt, it's worse than that, man. Most of these dudes are nothing but no bake cookies, man. No bake cookies, man. So you mean to tell me that you're just gonna stir that stuff up and just let it sit there, man? For real? No oven, right? You expect me to eat that? Nah, man. Not having it, bro. Hell, even processed cookies don't taste good, man. Yeah. And what do you think happens when you have two and three generations of non-productive people who just keep creating other non-productive people, who keep creating other non-productive people? The system kind of folds in on itself at some point, and that's coming soon, man. You can't maintain a system of non-producers because as soon as there's a viable alternative, all those people are gone. That's what most of these people are seeing right now. Trying to do what's easy, trying to do the bare minimum, and trying to maintain the bottom just because your numbers are greater, dude, that doesn't work long term. But it's simple. They didn't want that kind of power because they wanted to do what was easy. That easy life got some real unexplainable results, man. I be around these people, man. They have tons of money, never received a loss in any part of their life. Like their dog or their cat died, and they're just devastated. Never been through anything. You can't live like that either. That's why you got so many people trapped in a. This is why you got so many people who's between the age of like 25 and 65 who act emotionally in the same way. Yeah. Like when you go to other cultures that function and that work, dudes in their 50s and 60s, dude, they're preparing their grandsons for greatness. They already had a successful life of production. And so is the grandmother. We used to have that too. So what you guys have to understand that this actual way forward is pretty simple at this point. You got to get you together, man. You got to get you together. All this other stuff is still going to be there. It's going to be in far worse condition too by the time you get your stuff together as well. Thanks for the $5 super sticker, Justin March. So what I'm saying is simply that you got to go for the power, man. The power to be around, near, and not be involved in this stuff. That's some real power right there. The real power to hunker down and just concentrate on the things that you need to concentrate on. That's the real power now. This is why most of those TV shows, when I was in college and in engineering school, I don't even bother going back to go watch. Because during that time period, I was really doing something that was important, and I do not want to be reminded about the things that I missed out on. Especially where I'm at right now, it's impossible to think about that time period. And you gotta do the same thing. Some of these TV shows be on 6, 7 years. They know everything about it. Life went nowhere. Stayed at their same job. Didn't go to school. Didn't get no certifications. Didn't do anything. So like, the process isn't hard. It's hard when you try to encapsulate it around nonsense. That's what makes the process hard because you're trying to bring compromise and a specific process to the same table and it doesn't work. What's going on, Ransom?
Hey, what's up, MOT? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, nah, I just wanted to come up because you were saying, and you kind of been hitting on it now. You were talking about change. Um, it's so easy right now.
Yeah.
Like all you need is a laptop and internet connection.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of a time in human history when it's been easier.
Yeah.
Like everything, learn a new skill or certification. Learn a new language. Online degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much you can learn and do. I mean, you got people who have literally been starting YouTube channels, just doing day trading.
Yeah.
It's just so much if you're willing to like hunker down and cut out the BS, turn off the television, turn off anything that's not productive, get rid of people who aren't really trying to go anywhere, and link up with people who have goals and ambitions, even if they're not in your respective field, just people who are doing something productive. The sky's the limit right now, and you can kind of do it anywhere in the world. I was talking to a coworker the other day. He went to DR for a week. He had a friend say, "Hey, let's go to DR for a week." He'd been working from home since the whole pandemic hit, so here he is working in another country, sitting on a beach, sitting on his laptop working. So getting paid and on vacation.
Friend of mine, same way. Was in Texas. You know, he free, man. He's free. He's free. A couple people I know in Texas, man. San Antonio, Dallas. They work for the federal government. Some still work for the army. Some work for the Air Force now. A couple of them I was in the military with way back in the day. There were cops suffering the consequences, and now these dudes they're on the other side of it, man. They didn't mess their life up. They did not immerse themselves in this type of problem, and they didn't try to level up through this type of system, and they're doing good right now, man. They're doing good because they didn't compromise. Now they probably was lost for a very specific period of time, but most of it is when you actually get ready to do it, all the things that can stop you. And then there's a lot of people who life circumstances changed a lot, and then it became harder, but not impossible.
Yeah,
Dominican Republic.
Black Curl said in the chat too. Yeah, Black Curl said, yeah, you got Ivy League schools now offering free online education.
Yeah.
Harvard, Yale, Penn, all of them got like classes they can offer free. We've done on the Brain Trust, all sorts of certifications you can get to jump into IT. And it's like once you get that momentum of that first win, it opens other doors. It's like when you miss an opportunity, you don't just miss that opportunity. You miss the opportunity and the door that was going to come as a result of taking that opportunity. So it's a cascade effect, and vice versa. When you take that, you take that step to that first opportunity, it's going to lead to another one that you were like, wow. And once you start seeing that effect of, 2 or 3 opportunities that came from this first step, you're like, man, imagine if I didn't take that first one.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand, man. Bro, listen. Because somebody asked me about this too. Um, Wasn't scared leaving. Dude, I was scared of staying, man. That's what I was scared of more than anything else. I seen people who had, who had went to school, if they went to like Mississippi Valley State or Jackson State or Grambling and all that kind of stuff, and they got out of school and they came back to work at Kmart or Walmart or J.C. Penney or at the mall before it closed.
Hell no. You done all that. You done all that work and end up in a no. Like I was
Yeah,
the same way. I'm like, if you stay here, what did you just do the last 4 years for?
for real, man. And I didn't want that, man. I did not, dude. I was scared of staying, man. I'm like, look, this may be scary as hell going into the military, but guess what's even scarier? Staying out here in these drug and crime-ridden streets. That was way worse. I'd rather take a chance and gamble on myself. I wanted to be in charge of this thing, man. I wanted to be able to find out what it was like if I put myself just in different circumstances. I wanted to make sure that I seen it, even if I did fail, and I did quite a few times. Most of it by my own hands. It really wasn't circumstantial until I just went into business, went into business with the wrong type of people, and once I got the wrong type of people out of it, that's when it started succeeding. Because I was taking less chances and I was investing more in actual tangibles and results rather than trying to maintain relationships. That was a big problem of mine. Trying to maintain these acquaintances, associations, and relationships. I'm like, you can maintain that type of relationship, but you ain't got to bring them into your business, bring them into your organization, hire them, and all that kind of stuff. No, man. No, man, you keep the work about the work. And if they can't do the work, then go get a professional to actually help you. Because professionals, that's what professionals do. They do the job. They're not trying to maintain all that kind of stuff. They can actually do what they need to do.
Yeah. I was gonna say for me, when you talk about the scary thing with stagnation,
Oh
coming back,
man.
coming back and seeing like when you go off and then you come back 4 years later and you see everybody still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're like, damn, what like 4 years is passing and nothing has changed.
That's how it was,
Like,
man. Yeah, that's how it was. It's like, especially in school, and it was like, like, I keep telling people this, and they don't understand, man. Like, once you focus on yourself, and once you're moving forward, time slows way down for you, and it speeds way up for everybody else. So while these people are going through all this kind of stuff, man, you're on one singular path toward progress. And guess what? You can get that stuff away with a couple of bad decisions. That's another thing about getting your stuff together. It's so easy to throw it back at them, man. The people don't understand that the higher you go up, the easier it is to lose. Oh man, if I was doing this, I'll do this, that, and that. Yeah, you'll be broke in a year. No, you make a couple of
yeah,
bad
that was the
investments, and that's it. It's over.
yeah, that was the whole thing with the I believe it was the Aaron Donald situation when I was watching, they were talking about that on Undisputed. And Shannon Sharp pointed out a point. He was like, pretty much, hey, if you got that type of money, uh you have to have private get-togethers. You can't be out in the public with all these people
Oh
around, people
hell
who got
no!
nothing
Oh
to lose.
no!
And then one
Oh
guy,
no!
yeah, yeah, and then one guy sees, oh, well, if I go and start a fight with this guy or something, I can get an easy couple $1 million off him in a lawsuit, and he may
Yeah.
lose his job. It's like
Hmm.
you people got to have realize that, hey, you can't hang around people who don't have anything to lose. That's why when you look at like, if you look at like clubs or private like clubs in cities, that's basically what those are created for people who high level whatever executives, politicians, lawyers, those private, a country club, something like that. That's basically
Yeah.
so they can go in a place, go somewhere, let their hair down, but they're around people who got something to
Who
lose versus
also
trying
got
to.
something to lose too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 'Cause there's a lot of private establishments like that in Denver that people be trying to weasel their way into, and it end up not working because they end up talking to some person like, "Hey man, this guy gotta get out of here. He's one of them. You gotta get out of here." Or she, what is she doing in here? Nah, she gotta go. Gotta go. And it's like most of this stuff is about keeping it, man. Like a lot of people have this YOLO type of thing. They want to do all this crazy stuff. They don't want there to be any type of consequences, and they want to walk away with the full profits. Like, all right, man, life don't work that way, dude. It does not work that way.
People get that mentality. They watch too much media because that's where it comes from. Television, music, whatever. Yeah, you can have that mentality, and it looks like there's no consequences because it's not real life.
Yeah, man. Like I can't be around scatterbrained dudes no more, man. Like I fell out of that probably like the mid level, like when my content started changing, probably about July, August of last year, man. I was just done with the scatterbrained dudes who are not really focused on nothing, man. Because if you're not focused on nothing, any type of progress you run away from, and you just run back to conversations that's restarting the actual system of how you got there in the first place. Well, that's very good. Like for Hammer to have the conversation because he's an extremely young guy, it's unacceptable for dudes 50 something years old talking about you. Nah, hell nah, man, nah. It's something wrong with
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you know. You deal with people. Someone says, "Hey, I'm a lawyer. Hey, I'm a doctor. I'm an engineer, and or I'm a manager." And it's like a dude comes up and says, "Oh, I'm a dating coach." It's like, what? Okay.
Nah, man.
I know who I can't take seriously.
No, it's just that people want to do what is perceived to be easy, that don't have any skill involved, and kind of like YouTube has really legitimized because it's kind of like the new rap industry, man. You ain't got to push tapes out of the back of a truck no more, man. You could just come online, turn the camera on, and pander to the culture that isn't going to work for you, and that's how people get by, I guess. I'm not going to be doing that, but it's just that this message is to the wrong people. That's why I see what the problem was. It was targeted at people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s when it should have been targeted toward people who are actually far younger than that. Because a lot of these parents, they ain't got the social skills to like mentor these people in a place where they're gonna be getting past this cultural narrative either. For real, they ain't got them type of skills. Shit, I'm and I just simply help out nieces and cousins and shit over like Xbox Live, keeping them on the track.
Yeah. It's
Getting
so
up
many
out of these
ways you
bad
can.
circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's because yeah, that's the thing. It's so many ways, and like that's the thing when people say like, is it scary leaving? I'm like, you got to think because I like I said, I've had uncles who or great uncles who left the South and moved to Detroit and places like Flint for jobs up in the GM and Ford and things like that. I've talked to them. They pretty much had to pretty much go on a whim. Sleep on someone's couch, get themselves together like that, and then move forward. And it's like, back then you had maybe a rotary phone, if that, if you
Yeah.
were lucky. And it's like now you got a cell phone, internet. So it's like even if you want to stay in contact with someone, it's like you can call them. You got FaceTime, text, email, like all these forms of communication. So it's like it's even easier now to leave somewhere. And if there are people you want to keep in contact with, it's even easier to do that now than it was then.
Yeah. And it's like this stuff ain't gonna do nothing but get more and more and more easier. So now you had people who were locked out of opportunities because there's a lot of people in these rural areas who are just as stuck in their small ass towns too. A lot of these areas, like I'm in Ohio right now, and dude, you drive through some of these areas, man, and
Oh
those
yeah.
people are stuck in those cities. Stuck. I'm talking about no car, no public transportation,
No
crazy
net, no
stuck. Yeah,
network to get out.
no internet. Internet is still like a luxury item in Mississippi and some places in rural Ohio that they still don't even have high speed internet. Like, damn,
Yeah,
people
yeah,
still
yeah.
live like that.
Yeah, places in Georgia were like that. I had a coworker who was like that. Yeah, but me and Mike were talking about the infrastructure bill on the Progressive Brothers podcast.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things in the bill was bringing high speed internet broadband to all these rural areas. And it's like, okay, how many of these Republicans and these people are really going to have enough sense to go and push for it? You know, the constituent.
They're not gonna say no to that.
Most of them are
I
just
mean,
going to see, oh, it's.
but if it was a standalone
Well, no,
bill,
I was
they,
going to
they
say,
would get it.
yeah, if it was a standalone bill, see, they're not going to read it. They're going to let the politicians tell them, oh, it's a leftist document, it's a Green New Deal, it's not infrastructure, and then not even look into it when it's like this would help your community tremendously. Instead of like they've done the pandemic, you had to park buses out in the middle of the of some of these areas to be a hotspot for Wi-Fi.
Very true, because it's like when I was doing that plant out in Fort Wayne, and there was another Subaru plant in kind of rural Indiana that was probably about 150 miles away from that. Those people in the middle of nowhere had like parking rides, man. It'd be like a cornfield, boom, parking ride. That was the only way those people would get into those jobs, man. The only way they was getting to those jobs. Period. And it's like, dude, if you don't have like in Mississippi, there's no intrastate bus system service that take people from, city to city. There should be that. That's how you increase economic activity in those areas. But but when you don't have any capital investment in the people, and somehow you expect all these things out of people, that's not how it works. And I mean, it's easy to say that, oh, they should do it on their own. These companies don't do it on their own.
And
Hey, when
here's
it came time
the
for them to
crazy.
get them government contracts, they went for them. Yeah.
And
Okay.
and the crazy thing is too, some of these companies actually even have the foresight of saying, "Hey, we don't even want to put a business in a place like that." Like when you look at Amazon, and it put its headquarters, like the places that were finalists were D.C., Atlanta, New York. I believe Austin was in there as well. Their whole thing was we wanted public transit, we want access to public transit, access to the workforce that actually can fill these jobs. So it's like
Yeah.
even they're realizing like, hey, it doesn't kind of make sense to go build some of these places out in the middle of nowhere where people don't even have the basics to get there and do the job and have some sort of contentment with it. So like the thinking is so outdated. But a lot of this is a lot of these people just they don't want to really see a 21st century America because of the demographics. So they just have the mentality of, oh, I'm just going to basically try to keep it 1950s as long as I can.
Yeah, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, what's going on, Renaissance? Yeah, man.
Hey, what's up, Nagone?
What's going on? Yeah, you just made a hell of a point. That's exactly right. Some of these areas want to keep these areas literally recessed, almost rural. Um, in some respects, I hate to use this term, and I don't know if I don't know if it would sound exactly right, but almost quasi third world. In certain respects, they want to keep it not so much third world, but like I said, 1950s, and really not advance it for their own parochial needs. But I find I don't know how long that's going to really stand up, given the global demands that are being made, and how uh, I don't know. The census just came out. You're looking at our population has not grown a great deal, so
No.
there are a lot of issues with us actually. Even if you take a look at that, where we may not even be that competitive, and if we're not increasing the levels of our education, of course, we have to increase our infrastructure. We have to increase a lot of this for just for business sake. We're looking at China, whose basically GDP grew 2.3% during the worst of the pandemic, and now it seems things have moved on a little bit past that to where now what was their GDP? Something like 12% or something really crazy that it went over the last 7 months. I mean, it's been crazy. The growth overseas. So what some of our plans are, we're going to have to get with what's going on with respect to the world and compete there. If we don't, we're going to find ourselves literally ass out in a very short period of time worldwide. Not, we'll still have money and wealth, but we're not going to be the leaders. And infrastructure and all play a huge role in that.
I mean, we already seen this movie before. It's called Cuba.
Yeah,
Outside of like the hospitals and the doctor creation aspect of it, we already seen this movie before. Like listen, like when Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, I was watching the live stream and I think no, it was me. I told Mike about look at this dude. He literally said that infrastructure jobs is going to cost Mississippi jobs. I'm like, dude, you don't have jobs there, but the only thing they don't want to do is they don't want to extend I-69 from north and south. They rather have east and west interstate highway so that way they can control how far the state actually goes. If you have a north to south interstate highway, they have to electrify, they have to run water to it, and people would immediately move out of all those areas to brand new infrastructure. So, in order to hold the entire state back, they just refuse the money every time. Insane.
That or MOT. I was gonna add too.
Okay, somebody has a lot of background noise, man.
This factory that pays $9 an hour. They're gonna be out of luck. They may have to pay people 15 or something.
And that's another thing that happens too. You got these big ass companies that move to these rural places and they play like rural labor hours. Like a good example is when I used to go from like Detroit to Indiana when I was doing a lot of like auto parts and stuff when that stuff was still going at the first beginning of the Trump administration. You would leave a plant where people are making $40 an hour machining parts, and you would go to a place in rural Indiana where they're making $10 an hour. We're talking about 250 miles. A drop in wages just like that for the same job. Unbelievable.
it's looking like to me, to back out on this is we're cutting our own throats. It's hard to believe the level of ignorance that we have here in this country at this stage. Infrastructure builds your country. It builds your nation. It strengthens you. It gets you even through the more difficult of times. And it helps, preserve areas and preserve the health and wealth of people. I mean, we wouldn't have had, let's say, a Hoover's Dam or anything like that without huge expenditures in infrastructure. We couldn't build something like that today. Look at the areas in the states that dam itself serves. So if you're going to sit back here and cut your own throat because you want to play short-term politics behind this, it doesn't make sense to me at all. I'm not really embracing where this other party's coming from.
Yeah, but it does make sense. It makes sense like this. They want to maintain their level of power. They don't care about the people's progress. Now, if you look at like simply like I-76 through Pennsylvania, there's a hell of a lot more economic activity along that highway, especially when you go from Harrisburg all the way to Philly, than there is Philly going to all the way to the Ohio border, even though it's a toll road. And there's really no part of the state that has that level of economic activity outside of that, except for like Wilkes-Barre. But that's like I-476. Again, same thing. All this infrastructure creates lots of opportunities around the infrastructure that's built. That's how investments work. You invest in people, you get outcomes from the people that you invest in. And now the stuff is just going to be people going to be regionally left behind. And then there's going to be people who are going to be migrating to these stagnant places, and they're going to be the new sultans of those areas. I'm seeing it right now. People from New York moving to Mississippi, taking their whole family with them. They own an entire city, not even waiting on other people. They're just not interacting with everybody else. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, what's going on? I was just listening, but yeah, we kind of covered that. Myself and Renaissance kind of covered that on the infrastructure bill on the Progressive Brothers podcast, and they're basically pushing this initiative that if you're not educated or you are not skilled, they are going to force you into being upskilled and educated. There is no other way around this. They're not going to be left. They're not going to leave anybody behind, kind of like the No Child Left Behind thing, because the environment or the market is going to be predicated on the abilities of the people. That's what the human infrastructure bill next month is going to be about.
That's right.
They're not going to leave anyone behind. And so if Mississippi doesn't want to get on board, the people will have to get on board, and that will force an overthrow of the government there.
Hey, Mike, I
I
have a question to ask you, Mike, directly, because you guys really covered it nice, and man, you guys on top of it. But Mike, why do you feel that the Republicans on the right side are sitting here saying that we don't want to push this, and we don't want these people to upgrade it and upskill? What's the deal with that? If you can expand on that a little bit more, thanks.
Well, because the initial bill by Biden is coded with African American and minority. That's something that they don't like, and their base doesn't know how to resonate with either. And so the idea is to gut the bill and only make it on infrastructure for roads and potholes and things like that, but not for minorities, not for
correct
American and things like that. They want to make sure they clean that thing out and sanitize it of any sort of identity politics that's in there. And so in Mississippi, in Jackson, where 85% of the population is Black, they don't want those people having access to digital infrastructure such as high-speed internet and Wi-Fi and 5G and stuff. No, we don't want that. What they want is to make it so that only the white civil engineering.
They're gone, man. You got a lot of background, man. You gotta handle that, man. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, what they want is those white civil engineering firms to get the contracts on building those roads, laying down the asphalt, putting up, the contracting for the land, the lawn mowers and things like that, cutting the medians and stuff like that, and guardrail work. That's little simple work that can be done by them, but can actually be done by African Americans because they're minorities in Jackson. So why wouldn't they have that? So that's really what it is. They did come up with a response to the bill. Tim Scott is supposed to be presenting it this week, his response to the bill. But the reality is, time is up for people who don't want to progress. It's just time is up. You can't actually run a functioning society with people who don't want progress.
Yeah, because it becomes a national security issue at some point, having so many people at the bottom. As much as they want to make claims about people getting stuff for free, that's a lot of people not progressing. How do you have like an entire kind of rural America still not progressing, and the only thing you got nailing the big numbers in the states are big cities? Like, you can't run a country like that. At some point, you're going to have to be forcing these people to have like a better system.
Yeah, it's like that's what's funny to me when I always listen to how a lot of the people on the right like to talk about California and talk about how bad it is. I'm like California is the 5th largest economy in the world. Like, if it broke off from the U.S., it'd be the 5th largest economy in the world. You got some of these other states that these people are in. If they broke away from the U.S., it's like you go to third world country status immediately.
Yeah, okay, Texas. If you took away the Dallas in the suburbs, Austin in the suburbs, and San Antonio in the suburbs, you literally have Mississippi left. That's all you have. And it's like, they got to realize, like, look, man, you got to take a side. You got to have the capital investment. I say my taxes should go up. They should, because I know every single year there's more and more stuff to pay for, more and more stuff to upgrade to. More and more stuff. Like, some of my friends be traveling, man, showing me video of the airport that they landed in. I'm like, dude, that looks nothing like what we have in America. Nothing. And yeah, no capital investment, because capital investment equal minorities might benefit. Therefore, we're not going to do anything, and we're just going to play this get it out of mud philosophy and do things the hardest type of way. No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. On top of that, I was going to add, that'll come back. Oh, I was going to say that will come back to you as well, in the sense of, okay, if you have a tax increase, but it's paying for infrastructure, it's like, okay, you can turn around and bid on those infrastructure contracts. Same thing what you were saying with the airport, things like that. It's like, okay, Like all of these things are investments, which investments are going to be things that pay off in the long run. So it's like, hey, spend $100 today and get, you know, $1,000 back in 5 years. Like that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's just that a lot of people don't understand what they're actually for. They're just for people doing it the hardest way possible. And it's like, even if you did do it the hardest way possible, it still should be easier for everybody else outside of that. Okay, grandfather was a sharecropper. What the hell my father and me look like being a sharecropper? It doesn't make any sense for people to keep repeating things the hardest way imaginable and possible. When you got China who can pre-print engineers by the millions. We're not doing that. We don't even have an education system set up for that to happen. And then you have people who say, well, it's not the responsibility of the government to educate your kids. That's your job. No, but it's the government's job to set down a mission for the actual people to actually be a part of. But a lot of people have this kind of freedom mixed up where they don't understand that intellectual capital is just as important as everything else. But they want to get rid of the intellectual capital portion so that way they can maintain their position at the bottom. And that stuff doesn't work after a period of time. It becomes a problem after a period of time.
Yeah, not to mention the government's going to have to deal with the fallout of, hey, we don't have enough engineers, when it's like, okay, we have all these cybersecurity hacks that are going on and we don't have the coders and software engineers to go and patch these things up, or, you know, turn around and make the software adequate to withstand the hack. Or people keep coming out with new technology and we don't have the engineers to keep up to make that technology secure. Like that's what even I believe I was having that debate with David one time when he was talking about freedom and stuff. And I was like, dude, at the end of the day,
no, man. We're not talking about helmets, man. Yeah.
no, I was just telling him at the end of the day, your government is going to have an incentive to ensure that it has the capital and intellectual capital to actually function as a society. Like you got to have some basic level of competence within your citizenry.
Yeah. Yeah, but their freedom requires them to remain ignorant and stagnant because that's freedom to them. So they don't want to live in a modern society. They want the benefits of a society, but not the work that goes into actually creating a society itself. So that's why it just devolves into trolling, because entertainment based nonsense, like you don't need any credibility to sell comfort. Those people are well protected because they give people the comfort and not changing and not really understanding how things work as well. I want things to actually work so that way we could be able to dominate, so that way we could be able to succeed. I don't give a damn what you look like. That's what I'm for. All right. This isn't hard. If you want to be able to have the best stuff, you got to have the best investment. You got to have the best system. The best system create the best results.
Yeah, Mississippi has access to to the Gulf.
Yeah.
It's in proximity to three other states, four other states.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no reason why they should not have a high-speed rail developed between Jackson to Birmingham, from Birmingham to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Major infrastructure that could actually greatly benefit them. Atlanta has the busiest airport in the country. International flights in and out, high-speed rail come right into it, take you all the way to Jackson on a comfort ride, and everybody wins.
Yeah, second busiest airport in the world.
Yeah. Oh, okay, well, let me give you an example. Highway 82, U.S. Highway 82, goes from, it kind of empties out at like the southern part of Dallas, probably like 70, 80 miles, but it goes all the way to Atlanta. One highway, straight through Mississippi, straight through Alabama, straight through the Delta, straight through all that stuff, all the way to Atlanta. Easily you can build high speed rail along that thing all the way through. It'll bring the actual, because they're thinking about doing it right now in Denver, from like Lima, which is 90 miles outside of Denver, to actual Denver. So that way they can move people out to a bigger and bigger area by high speed rail. But no capital infrastructure means no benefit for people.
Yeah, the ability to move people in and out is going to be predicated on the infrastructure. I mean, how many Chinese buses, these mega buses, can you really pack people on, man? That's not the business anymore, man. That work maybe, 9/11, when 9/11 hit, and all the airports were shut down, Yeah, people were jumping on Amtrak's and jumping on these Chinese buses, and that, you know, that had some short term growth. But once airports reopened back up after a month or so, that you know, that sugar high went away. And so I'm not from Mississippi. I don't really understand the mindset down there, but you know, access to the Gulf, in proximity to four other states which is surrounded by, the ability to have fast logistical import export of goods and services and stuff like that. Mississippi should be doing way better. But it's an example of what happens when you allow a certain mentality to take over a state. They become a failed state overnight.
So you think these guys want to wipe off their own noses to spite their faces just because
Yes. Yes.
you have a lot of blacks who are involved?
Okay. Yeah, well,
Yes.
they have to in order to maintain their position.
Correct.
I mean, we see that in West Virginia right now. White coal miners, who are out of work right now and suffering from all sorts of respiratory issues because of the places that they work inside the mines and whatnot, didn't have access to proper health care. They basically told these guys to go code, go learn how to code. That's not a sufficient answer. I mean, I don't know what Republicans.
And those people flat out said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not going back to work. We're not doing a damn thing. Nobody called those people welfare recipients. Nobody called those people they wanted handouts for the government. No one did that.
And their numbers are decreasing. Their numbers are decreasing. They're not increasing in numbers of population. In fact, I find that very interesting.
Yeah, the sort of pollution that's impacting them and black people in some of these areas too. It's the equivalent of a baby smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. I mean, it should be considered a human rights violation, by civilian purposes and by the standards of the United Nations. But somehow they're able to get around this type of stuff because they're not submitting this data, to the international boards, right? And so in Mississippi, people not having access to internet and not having digital literacy means that you are illiterate. You can't type up an email. You can't send a proper, text message out. WYD. That's not sufficient for getting a job, man. You can't say what you're doing, in three simple letters as a way to communicate with people, man. That's a form of illiteracy. A lot of people.
And that's what company is going to invest in putting their product or their business there versus other places that got this stuff figured out a long time ago. Nobody's going to put their product down there. I mean, they're just flat out not going to do it unless it's some extremely low skill thing that they can actually get the people to actually work at for pennies. And then, people are fighting over those few jobs down there. I think that the government should just go down there and force these people to modernize. Like, look, if you can't run your city one sort of way, you're going to have an economic advisor that you're going to have to work with to modernize certain areas of the actual state. It's the only way. Other than that, you're just going to have these people just running stuff into the ground, man. It can't work like that.
Didn't the federal government go up to Michigan and hold the people of Flint, the people of Flint accountable? I mean, they held the leadership there accountable, and some of those people actually going to go to jail. So Mississippi's days are up, man. Whoever's running the state and whoever's inside those bodies, man, the time for ducking and dodging and shucking and jiving, I think their days are going to come to an end in the next administration. I don't see how you can function as a state without clean water, modern infrastructure, no high-speed rail, no mass transit. People still paying exuberant amounts of money for box Chevys and foolishness and working at Walmart. That's not a career, man. It's not sustainable.
Power too. I was going to say, Mike, when we were looking at the infrastructure bill, they were talking about a lot of these co-ops in rural areas, how much they charge for electricity in some of these places.
Oh yeah. Some of their bills are higher than mine in Colorado. And I live in a way better area than these people live. I'm like, God damn, $200 for one bit. What are y'all doing? But private company, they can do whatever they want to.
That's exactly right. And then think about when the solar season comes in, these guys are paying electric bills that damn near are close to their mortgages. Or their rent. It's crazy. It's It's sick like that.
You're gonna need wind turbines on those old farms that are not producing anything right now. You're gonna need solar panels on everybody's rooftops, man. That's gonna be the move. Whoever can get the contracts on that, whoever can actually, upskill a lot of those people. I don't even know if Mississippi has any community colleges. I don't even know if Ole Miss and whatnot.
No. I mean, they do, but it's the same problem.
Mhm.
They're not in the city like that. You still have to travel to get to them, and when you don't have, when there's really no economy to even produce the ability for you to have a car on average, it becomes the same issue of people having scholarships and can't really take advantage of it because they don't have a place to stay or transportation to the place. And it's like, you can't keep holding people hostage like that. It's, it's crazy. What's going on, Dr. Phoenix?
Hey, how you doing this afternoon?
Hey,
Are we doing all right?
Hey, what's up, Dr. Phoenix?
Hey,
What's up, Dr. Phoenix? Good to see you.
what's going on? How you doing, Nicole? No. No. Go ahead, finish your thought before I add my piece to that.
Yeah, it's like some of these places you go to here, because I'm driving around town and I'm looking at how much these basic state, like in Ohio, I think it's called STNA, state tested or something like that. Nurses, dude, these people get paid like $35 an hour. They were never making that kind of money. We're talking about 3 or 4 weeks of training, and they out there making buku money, and they have literally nobody showing up for it.
I mean,
Unreal.
The way Emerson speaks about Mississippi, you think that he ran from another country or something like that, like Mississippi, some foreign country or some kind of island that is not non-contingent to the United States government itself. It's a shame to hear him speak like that, but he's the righteous indignation of the state of Mississippi is justified.
No, it's culture. It's culture shock. Like if you go to somewhere like a Denver or a major city and go to some of these rural places, you'll literally think, "Am I in another country?"
No, that was my experience over the past couple of years because I had spent a little bit of time down in Baton Rouge, and pretty much once you get outside of, if you go along that I-10 and you get outside of, basically you got Baton Rouge, and then you can take the I-10 and it runs into New Orleans, and then you can just take that a couple more hours, and then you're like in Houston or whatever. And essentially, when you go along that entire corridor, you basically it's rural. I mean, even the first time I even flew into Baton Rouge, and I was in the airport, and once you get outside that Baton Rouge airport, I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? It's really hard to believe that you're really stepping back in time. These places look no different than it did if this was 1865. And so, in my general opinion, when I was down there, I was doing some work with some of the health systems down there, and I can tell you now, like you got folks popping up with rare conditions. People, folks. Last time folks heard of it was in a textbook in nursing school or medical school or something like that.
Hookworm.
Yeah. People, in fact, there's an entire corridor along that I-10 that they call Cancer Alley, where basically you have, because you got a lot of petrochemical companies that pretty much can do whatever the hell they want down there. You have basically whole swaths of land that is basically uninhabitable, but people live there, and so you see folks popping up with rare cancers like oh my god, I can't think of it now. Just was on the tip of my tongue, but the point is that you're seeing a lot of rare health conditions that typically professionals will only have read about. You may see one case in like 10 years or so, but I mean it's very commonplace in those areas like Mississippi, and even if you go along that entire Gulf Coast area, it's not just Mississippi, but Louisiana, when you get to Arkansas and stuff like that. So
Yeah, but you have to realize that, Dr. Phoenix, that unfortunately people are fishing in those rivers and they're actually hunting game along downstream, and that's what's causing those actual issues. Because a lot of people still get if you live, especially if you live toward the river, you still get the majority of your food out of the river, despite its condition, and actually all the wildlife on the other side of the river if you have a boat to get to the other side. And that's what's causing those things because those animals eat and drink that water, have all these problems, and then people go out there and go hunt the animals because they can't legitimately produce because the houses have been paid off a long time ago. They just paid a little pittance with their actual disability or retirement check, and those are the conditions that they're just stuck in. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, just the general lack of infrastructure is really amazing. It was really astounding when I was in that area where people essentially. I mean, if you're not like, let's say you're maybe if you lived in, for example, in Baton Rouge, the nearest hospital is maybe about a 30-minute trip, a major hospital, and it's like really the only one in the area. And then the next place you go to is like New Orleans. But for the most part, for most people in those areas, you're understanding they're anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half away from a major medical institution. So if you're having an emergency, it's highly likely people will die in transport because I mean the way things are just I mean, things are just designed in such a manner where you can it's basically an area where you got a lot of old money, and then basically it's just kind of that's it. It's basically either old money or you folks like MOT. You found one way to get the hell up out of there, and you just got up out of
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Very desperate.
Go ahead.
Got third world country. It's like third world country activity.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just saying I dropped a link in the back chat. Yeah, I was just saying I dropped a link in the back chat for the high-speed rail between Birmingham and Mississippi.
They've been talking about high-speed rail because, like, right now I'm in Illinois, and and I'm kind of in a rural area now in Illinois, down here doing some rotations, and I'm telling you, like, even here, man. I mean, I'm seeing folks rare conditions. I mean, stuff I've never even heard of. I'm talking to other doctors and healthcare professionals. They've never even heard of this. They're just as clueless as me, and they're sitting here looking like, oh well, I got to do something because I have to because hospital wants to get paid. The insurance demands that I have to do something to make it look like I'm trying to treat people, but that's what's going on.
Yeah,
and essentially you literally have, like, where I'm at right now, man. I can tell you, just not even just anecdotally, but if I was to just look at hard numbers, I am saying that, like, if this area where I'm at is so direly in need of neurologists because you have so many folks that are popping up with yeah, I mean, you have kids popping up rare conditions. I'm talking about like 1 in a million. You're seeing conditions. You're seeing the average person down here has significant respiratory issues. So whether they're overweight, they have COPD, emphysema, something like that. People are rabid smokers down here. I mean, I'm probably thinking 3 to 5 packs a day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, rabid smokers. Never seen anything quite like this. Yeah. I mean, this. I mean, this. Yeah. Yes, this is typical. I mean, even in the deep South, man, it's very common to come across patients. They've been smoking or using chewing tobacco since they were 10, 11, 12 years old. Very common. Saw it a lot. Saw it all the time. I mean, this is kind of the craziness that's going on out here. I mean, people, once you get outside of these major metros, and you go into some of these more rural areas of the country, the flyover land, if you will. I mean, it's an entirely another country. Unbelievable.
Yeah, go ahead, Miguel. All right, Renaissance.
Nah, I was just shocked. That's an unbelievable amount of cigarettes to smoke. That's an unbelievable amount of cigarettes to smoke. So I mean, you're looking at over more than 60 cigarettes almost or so in the daytime to smoke. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's incredible. But and it's only going to kill you. But I am aware because I was listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, and I'm trying to forget. I'm forgetting exactly which podcast it was, but they were talking about it was in some of these rural areas where people had ringworm, and so where these were very, you don't see ringworm, you basically in the average American city where around, but you're seeing in these, rural places where ringworm and this kind of stuff is still a problem. And these are
Yeah, I
third
mean,
world
it was
type
very
diseases.
common where I'm from. Very common. Very common. Very common.
Ringworm, very common. Wow.
Very
Yeah,
common. Very
yeah.
common.
You see ringworm, impetigo. That's another common one, impetigo,
Yep.
which is one to come up because you have dirty water sources and stuff like that. People bathe in
Yep.
them, people
Yep.
drink from it.
Yep.
So that's another common one that you see. So I mean, I mean the work of modernizing this country. I don't think people really understand the scope and scale in which it needs to happen. People live, most of the population tends to live either on the coast or within your major metros. So people don't understand basically that central part of this country is essentially um pretty
It,
much rural.
yeah, it got hollowed out essentially. Once you had manufacturing leave, that was the end of it. People moved away, and
Yeah.
who could, and people stayed. And yeah, you're right, because just by data alone, you have roughly 50% of the population lives in 10 states. So like Texas, Georgia, Florida, California, New York, states like that. And then, like you said, the rest of these places are pretty rural, underpopulated, population getting older and shrinking. And yeah, if you're talking about fully modernizing most of this country, yeah, it's a major task. Because I mean, the cities don't have really a problem with that, because industry sees a sense for it, and there's more progressive leadership. But when you start going outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, can you
That's
see my
why I can't. Hold on a second.
Oh, I thought I was showing my screen. Share my screen the whole time.
Hold on a second. I'm on my phone. I'm not on a computer.
Okay.
Yeah. Black Torch says in the chat, according to the Army Corps of Engineers, to fix the water supply, it will cost us $1 trillion.
Ooh.
I
What?
mean,
I
that's
don't
that's
necessarily believe
believable.
that.
Go
I
ahead,
don't
Dr.
necessarily, I know we have a huge problem. I think we could get it done for cheaper than that. But the biggest problem that we've had in this country is we've never had a centralized office of infrastructure here in this country. We don't have that. Like we have the NTSB and so forth. We don't have a national infrastructure office, bridges, your water systems, all of this. A lot of these problems that we have of great health issues and so forth were infrastructure. We knew this back in the 15th century, 14th century, when we really started putting in the proper sewage systems around in a lot of these European these backwater savage European cities that these people were teamed up in, and they decided to put sewage in alone, and that cut down typhus and all these kind of diseases by major percentages, 50, 60, some places close to 100%. So you had major the disease diseases wiped out because of just because of a sewage system, just because of the infrastructure. So infrastructure is huge in a lot of this, and how do we have a country like the United States of America and we don't have a central infrastructure, even department, or bureau, or office? People say, "Oh, it's big government." Hold on one second. But you're talking about the joining up of all the states. Infrastructure is going to play a very key role in how your country actually functions. How could we not have that? I mean, we've got all this other crap going on, but we don't have that. That never made sense. Never made sense.
It's almost like it's pro-life, right? Pro-life, right?
Yeah.
Well, I just think I think that estimate that the Army Corps of Engineers, I I can believe that's that's a realistic estimate. I mean, if you look at even in your major cities, you still see major issues around just lead and water and drinking water
Yeah,
in your major cities. And I
yeah,
mean, even just for one of the biggest, obviously one of the biggest culprits is like Milwaukee, for example. I've talked about this previously, but Milwaukee has had a major issue with lead in the water, and those waters mostly run through black neighborhoods. Uh, uh, and those issues involving lead usually are pretty much in black neighborhoods. But just to modernize, replace those old lead pipes with more modern pipes, PVC or something like that, would cost tens of millions of dollars, and there has never been any will to get that done. In fact, it just kind of it keeps the can keeps getting kicked down the road. One health commissioner comes in, declares it an emergency, says this needs to get done, but there's never been any money that has ever truly been allocated to to fix the issue.
Because
Meanwhile, we continue to see the deleterious effects of obviously lead and water sources, and how essentially is one of the it's a major issue for the developmental for development of children, especially those between the ages of 1 and 5 years old. And I personally have seen this because I've worked in some health. I've been in some health departments, and I've been in some community clinics, and yeah. And when you're seeing 90% of kids got lead levels that are 2 to 3 times that of what the CDC's recommendation levels, you know, you have a serious public health issue. I mean, so again, these are not just fundamental infrastructure issues. These are issues that carry over into the public health realm, into the realm of health in general, and how this becomes sort of really all hands on deck. And yes, you do need a central agency that can really control how these things get dealt with, and certainly how best to rebuild an infrastructure or modernize the current infrastructure.
Yep.
Correct. And all this stuff take capital
And that
investment,
would
but
also
if you
play
don't,
into
Yeah, I don't know if anybody can see my screen right now.
okay, 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 I figured out how to do it.
All right.
I'll be honest, I was tempted to come on because I've kind of in passing heard conversations over the past few weeks, and a lot of silliness and just a lot of really misinformation and people not understanding there's a reason why government exists. It's not there to control every aspect of your life, but it is there to make sure things do happen the way it should happen. At least it's supposed to.
Well, yeah, it's people who have it's people who have embraced the right wing rhetoric, and the thing is that people on the right don't even realize the full consequences of this, even in the sense of just what it's doing, how much progress they've missed out on. Essentially, you've been behind since manufacturing left this country. You've been on a downward spiral, and you got people doubling down, and then you got a lot of guys in this space for whatever reason who are internalizing the grievances of others, not realizing it's going to lead them down that same self-destructive path.
Yeah, we had somebody who came from the South. I think just around COVID, something like that, and we've modernized, the mass transit infrastructure here. So you could basically pay with your phone, pay with your Apple Watch and your Fitbit and stuff like that. And this person, did not understand this. He's looking around. He's like, well, where's the where's the toll booth at? Where's the machine at? No machine. You just pay with your phone. That's pretty much how it's done.
Somebody had mentioned earlier about Ohio and nurses. An interesting story. You guys can Google this, and it was about, I want to say maybe about 3, maybe 4 years ago. There was actually a story that was published because you had nurses there in the correction system who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in overtime, because literally you have no providers there who want to come in and deal with the populations. So basically, you have nurses there, and obviously you do have a medical director, physician, but for the most part, because there's such a complete shortage of professionals, medical professionals, you don't the ones you have, you just have to pay them exorbitant amounts of money, for them to work tons of overtime and get tons of hours a week, to treat patients. And and these patients all have chronic conditions. So, whether they're dealing with kidney disease or diabetes or high blood pressure, whatever the case may be, the problem is that, these are issues that are systemic and really issues that fundamentally has to be addressed by the government. It can't be addressed has to be addressed by the federal government. It cannot be addressed by state and local municipalities, because again, we're seeing what's happening. We saw what was happening what happens over the past year with the pandemic, where things get politicized and people's personal agendas come into play. And so you kind of need that nonpartisan, neutral party to step in and to regulate and how these things should function.
Yeah, because what you're discussing, that's not from a health standpoint. I mean, there's nothing wrong with some overtime, but when you have people constantly, especially healthcare professionals, working overtime constantly, that leads to burnout, errors, and mistakes. And in healthcare, when you have mistakes, it can be deadly. So, I mean, it's just horrible from a management and morale standpoint. Because, I mean, I know people I know a nursing director in my family, and, they're having to go to other countries. Like, I believe they got someone from maybe Morocco or Algeria or somewhere North African countries on contracts to come over here because they can't meet the demands with the nurses here. So, like you said, you've got to address the shortage, and you've got to have an independent third party that can step in, because like you said, with COVID, that became politicized, and you had like county health directors who were just trying to basically say, hey, people need to put a mask mandate in place, and they were getting death threats in their own county just for trying to basically enforce public health, follow their oath of office.
Well, that's the culture war that people have, that they're fighting. They're trying to maintain this idea that is an infringement on their rights to basically spread, bacteria and diseases to other people. I mean, it's insane, but this is how this country is run. There is no way to really move forward and have progress with people who think this way. You need federal oversight to come in and investment to come in and to say, this is how it's going to be done, and this is how we're going to move forward. Rather than wait on municipalities to do anything because they're inadequate and lack the willpower to do it.
Yeah, but you're supposed to be able to make mistakes at work and then just start citing statistics that the mistakes don't happen all that often. That's the reason why you shouldn't complain about mistakes, right? That's how that works, right?
And that's such a dangerous precedent to have, because you wouldn't want your trauma surgeon making mistakes on a gunshot victim. You wouldn't want an engineer making the wrong calculations on a shuttle launch.
Actually, they do have that problem, right? They had that with the 737s. They cut a lot of.
Well, yes. I mean, we obviously know what happened in New Orleans and almost 20 years ago with Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what happens when you have mismanagement and essentially you have professionals that don't do their job. But again, this becomes this is just such a massive systemic issue where every aspect of society is affected, because you have inaction on the part of the federal government to actually step in and say that, you can have only 20% of the damn nation that's truly modernized, and the other 75% of it is just stuck in the dark ages someday.
Yeah, but you got people in this place who don't even believe in basic professionalism, because as we said just last night, All we're asking for from law enforcement is basic professionalism, and you got guys making every excuse in the world, and like I said, don't care about the money that's being wasted, rights being infringed upon. It's just, oh well, personal responsibility.
For you, not them, just for you.
Well, I think irrespective of, my personal opinion on it, irrespective of whatever I think of the lives that victims of police violence led, at the end of the day, you don't deserve to get shot in the back. You don't deserve to get kneeled upon like you're some big game hunt. I'll leave it at that, because I've heard some stuff over the past month or so that kind of really pissed me off. And you got dudes explaining how their spinal injuries somehow means that you can get asphyxiated, and Negroes don't know the difference between asphyxiation versus cutting off a blood supply, whatever. But again, I'm not gonna go there, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So we got anything else? Because I gotta get up out of here. I gotta go back to work. So any last words to go?
Nah, man, good show, man. You guys are breaking it down real nice. And thanks for having me up.
All right. Any last word, Dr. Phoenix? Thanks for coming through. I know your time's always short, so thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me, MOT. Always a pleasure. Good talking to everybody. Everyone have a good day.
Make sure y'all subscribe to the Progressive Brothers podcast. Mike V and Renaissance Man, they got a pretty good platform over there. They've been doing pretty good over there. Mike, can you drop that link in the chat again before you get up out of here? Before I go to you, or Renaissance Man? Renaissance Man, any last words?
No, thanks for having me up. And like MOT said, please subscribe to the Progressive Brothers podcast. We've talked about socialism. Do progressives have an image problem with black men? We've talked about the infrastructure bill, and Mike has broken down why black progressives don't fight the culture war. So please go check out the channel.
Yeah. Mike, any last words before we get up out of here?
No, thanks for having me on.
All right, so when's the next? Oh, shit, left. So when are y'all next podcast on there, Renaissance?
I think we're shooting for Friday to discuss Biden's first 100 days.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I definitely want to be on that.
Yeah, and I think we may actually look at trying to do something on a breakdown of the census as well too that just came out.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah, the Progressive Brothers podcast. Yeah, that's Mike B and Renaissance Man's platform. NJ Profit. Torch, man, had the show's over, man. You've been here for all this time. You want the link? Oh, bro. Oh, post a link for Mike's show.
I think you just posted it. Did Mike just post it?
Yeah, he did. He did, just right there. So so you can see the difference between people who actually care about policy and people who are just cultural conservatives, but still are somehow preoccupied with the opinion of liberal women. Completely. So I want to thank everybody for coming through. And it's very simple that you're going to address these issues. Are they meant to be addressed, or you're just going to approach it like a clown ass culture warrior? And I ain't got time for that. So I want to thank y'all for coming through on the Man Tomorrow. Thank you for continuously subscribing and listening. You guys have a really nice day. Peace.